All right, welcome back with a quick little review here, this time of the matches on day one of our first set of regional finals. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to record any later than this, so I do have to, unfortunately, miss out on a few of the South America matches. I'll still try my best to watch those highlights, of course, but I won't be able to include them in this video just because, again, I won't be able to record later tonight, so it's either I record this now or no video at all. So for the one series between Thunder Awakening and King of Kings, as I'm recording this, it is currently tied 1-1, and I don't know who's going to win that last matchup. And then Beast Coast versus Infamous takes place at 6 p.m. or likely whenever this first series ends up being done, as it will probably go past 6 p.m. But just to get into it, starting off with these matches here, I don't imagine this video is going to take me very long because there were a lot of very one-sided series today. The first of which being Boom versus SMG, which was probably one of the least dominating 2-0s of the day. It was still quite an impressive showing from Boom. It was basically just Boom last picking Medusa in both games, and SMG really trying to make this Morphling Spearbreaker first phase combo work, and it did have its highlights, especially in game 2. They got off to a much better start, but ultimately it didn't really work out. And for Jackie, who's brand new on the roster for Boom, sure, he didn't exactly have to have the most impressive showing, but he did play a very prevalent role, again playing his last pick Medusa, and he made it look quite good. So he's fitting in quite well. We'll see how they do in their next matchup, but so far so good for Boom. And for SMG, you know, it really looked like they were trying to get this strat that they've been working on for a little bit, working on the Spearbreaker Morphling combo that they first phased in both games, and it just really didn't work. They just kind of hit a brick wall. So we'll see if they try and force that tomorrow against their opponent in the lower bracket, or maybe they just go back to the drawing board and try something new. We'll have to see. But all around fantastic showing for Boom here. Following that, we had T1 versus Fnatic, which if you have not watched any series today at all and you want a good one to watch, this one's probably been the closest one so far that we've had. Again, a lot of very one-sided series today. But this one was fantastic. A lot of very close games. Not necessarily the most thrilling, but they were still pretty close nonetheless. Starting things off, game 1, T1 takes a very quick, nice win. Pretty much everyone on T1 playing fantastic. Gabby had a few slip-ups here and there, but ultimately he didn't look too out of place. He did his role. I believe he was playing that Lifestealer in the first game there. And this entire series was essentially, if you had Wraith King on your team, you lost, because Wraith King was picked in all 3 games and it lost all 3 of them. So, yeah, all around nice plays, specifically from Whitemon. He was playing his Shadow Demon in that game 1. I thought he had a lot of really nice disruption saves throughout that game, and an insane torrent from KoK. I believe it was like a 2 or 3 man torrent that ultimately ended up saving Gabby's life at one point, which turned a fight which ended up being likely the fight that would win them the game. It's hard to pinpoint that exactly. It wasn't like a huge turnaround as soon as you saw it, but it definitely snowballed the game way too far out of control for SMG, where they went from almost having this nice kill on Gabby's Lifestealer to all of a sudden they have no way to deal with it and their base is getting sieged. So great game. Game 2 though, however, Fnatic strikes back, and although they were leading throughout the most part of this game, it took them a very long time to win this one, and they were taking it very methodically. This game had a lot of really fantastic team fights in it, a lot of big, long, you know, some team fights going on for close to 2 minutes at a time, which was pretty ridiculous, but fantastic. Although the one downside is that usually it was a lot of time in between those big team fights, as teams were very cautious, knowing that if they lose the next fight too badly, or if they start getting picked off, they could start losing. But Fnatic ultimately played well. Again, T1 drafted the Wraith King in this game, so they had to lose. But I thought there was some pretty cool things going on in this game. There was a really cool Tidebringer snipe by Carl on the Armel Queen of Pain at one point in the early game. Again, a lot of insane team fights. The 54-minute team fight at the Roche Pit was fantastic. And yeah, again, Fnatic really taking their time to win this one. It ends up taking them over an hour, despite leading for most of this game. But again, they were really taking their time with this one. So the series is tied 1-1. We're heading to a third game, and Wraith King enters the draft once again, and it's Fnatic that take it once again. And this time, Gabby is playing his signature Phantom Assassin, and he makes it look very good. All around, there was a really strong fight around 35 minutes, despite the fact that the Wraith King had a DD. T1 just taking a fantastic fight. There was a lot of back and forth heading into the late game a little bit, but ultimately there just ended up being a point where they just couldn't really deal with Gabby's Phantom Assassin anymore, and he just started one-shotting everyone. And T1, they take this series. So both teams that made last minute changes to their rosters in Southeast Asia are both going to be the teams moving on. And T1 notably probably being the more impressive one, as they had lost quite a few matches to Fnatic heading into these regional finals, and they're finally able to take them down. Takes them 3 games, but they do it. And honestly, I'm just super, super pumped to see T1 versus Boom, as I think both of their new members looked quite good in their roles. Maybe not having to do as much. Gabby, I think, played a more critical role for T1 than Jackie did for Boom specifically today, but we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. These two teams meet up against one another in the second round of the upper bracket. As for SMG and Fnatic, they will play in the lower bracket, and the loser of that will finish 4th place and be eliminated from the tournament. And the winner moves on to the second round of the lower bracket. So very exciting there. And that'll likely be the series I talk about the most, because again, there's not a whole lot I can say about these following 2 series. This first one here, Liquid versus OG, was basically like watching the same game twice. Game 2 was a little bit less stompy, but it still felt super one-sided. Liquid was playing super well, specifically in that first game. OG gave the Weaver over to Liquid, and Boxy played an insane Weaver. It felt like he was everywhere in the early game. He was picking up kills, really just messing with the enemy cores, and Zion, his Spearbreaker, looking fantastic. So they take that game. That was a real stompy one. Again, it was kind of ugly. And in the second game, it's OG who gets the Weaver, but again, they give that Spearbreaker over to Liquid, who then put it on Boxy. Zai plays his Legion Commander, and he just impresses me so much. The utter dominance that Liquid had in the laning stage of this series was really insane. Like Zai specifically, Zai and Boxy, their lanes are pretty much always a wash. And Mickey also in particular, playing the Queen of Pain versus KoK matchup, which is supposed to be a pretty relatively 50-50 matchup, maybe slightly Queen of Pain favored just because she's able to regen off of her dagger and harass a lot easier. But man, Mickey just destroyed BZM in that mid matchup, and again, it's another case where the game just kind of spiraled out of control. Matu was on his Templar Assassin, a very tempo-based hero, and they end the game at a very appropriate 35 minutes. So, Liquid, I won't necessarily say I had my doubts. I had my reservations with them just because they didn't have the most convincing first place finish in the entire DPC, but they're showing that this is no fluke. They're able to beat OG once again, and OG, they're continuing to struggle to beat some of the better teams in this region. I talked about it in my preview that I did yesterday, that OG was able to beat pretty much every other team that didn't make it into these regional finals, and they really struggled to beat teams like the Gladiators, like Liquid, and like Tundra. So we'll see how they go from here. They're going to be going to the lower bracket for this next one. And they'll be facing off the loser of this next series, which was Tundra. Tundra was taking on the Gaming Gladiators, aka formerly known as Team Tickles. And Team Tickles and Tundra had actually played against one another very recently. It was actually their their second last matchup in the DPC right before those tiebreakers, and it was Tickles, or the Gladiators, who came ahead. They had a very convincing win, a very nice win. Tundra saying that they felt really disappointed afterwards, showing that they were kind of pissed off. They took it out on OG by stomping OG in that last series and then utterly destroying those tiebreakers, and we kind of had a repeat of that series, what they lost to them earlier on. Honestly, the Gladiators just always felt like they were 2 steps ahead of Tundra in every step of the game, even in the draft. The first phase Broodmother looked fantastic. It forced Tundra to ban it in the next game because they obviously just couldn't deal with it. 33 playing fantastic. A lot of very crucial stuns in the late game that just, well, I guess it didn't really make it to the late game, but in the mid game that just really hindered Tundra's ability to really enter fights and do anything. And again, kind of similar to the other matchup that we had in Western Europe, a very one-sided game that just snowballed way too far out of the laning stage, and it really just felt like they never really got control. And so they put up a decent fight in game 2, but again, it doesn't really do all that much here. Boom's Storm Spirit, for one, was insane. He was everywhere on the map. I believe he went 18-2 on his Storm Spirit, which was fantastic. And again, Tundra, they just aren't able to beat the Gladiators right now, and they're heading down to the lower bracket where they'll be facing OG. One thing I will say is that Tundra has not really struggled to beat OG pretty much at all throughout this tour, and they've beaten them quite recently as well. So I do favor them there. However, OG, I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little bit angry looking for a comeback as well. So I'm very excited for that matchup taking place in the lower bracket tomorrow. As for the 2 winners, Liquid and the Gladiators move on to the round 2 of the upper bracket where they will face off tomorrow as well. And I'm very excited for that one, as both of them are coming off of some very, very hot series here. And finally, the last series that I'm going to talk about here, one that's actually not even done, so I apologize for that because I'm, again, not able to record this any later than now. We have the first matchup between Thunder Awaken and APU King of Kings going on right now. Game 3 is about to start. The following series, Beast Coast vs. Infamous, is going to be starting once this series is complete, and I'll be watching that one as well. Again, trying to watch some highlights since I won't be available to watch it live. But yeah, honestly, after the first game and kind of heading into this, I thought this was going to be a complete wash. You know, Thunder Awaken now, not Predator, was looking fantastic, dominant, just very clean Dota all through and through. A few minor slip-ups here and there with games that they've dropped, specifically that one against No Ping comes to mind. But after that first game, where they won with a kill score of 35-3, in a matter of just under 31 minutes, was dominant. Everyone on the team was playing fantastic. Pakaz was playing his Faceless Void, and they ended up liking his performance on Faceless Void so much that they picked it in Game 2. And opposite to in Game 1, it really didn't feel like the best Faceless Void game, but heading into it, you kind of had the idea that, you know, Thunder Predator, they obviously have an idea for this of what it's going to work. And they did have their highlights in this game, but King of Kings really impressed me in this matchup here. I wasn't expecting them to put up this much of a fight. They take a nice win, despite the fact that Thunder Awaken was still playing quite well. They were, you know, buying a bunch of the Yule Scepters for the Ursa, who was just a pure menace in team fights. And even with all the kiting that they were able to do, they just had no way to actually kill the bear. And so this last pick, Faceless Void, that they picked in the second game, it really didn't go anywhere. And now I'm a little curious of what the Game 3 is going to look like. Again, I'm kind of bummed out that I'm not going to be able to watch it live, but I will be checking out highlights because this series has been pretty fantastic already, and I'd highly recommend checking it out. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, apologies for, you know, cutting this a little short, that I'm not going to be able to have all these matches in there, but tomorrow I will be including all the matches that take place, and so apologies for that, but I will talk to you guys tomorrow with another video.